So, much like the punk movement in its time, it was super revolutionary and influenced a lot of the culture in that area of time. It influenced, obviously, music, it influenced clothing, and it influenced certain social themes and other music genres that kind of stemmed from the punk movement. And so, now, the new underground movement, in my opinion, is from a musical genre called Vaporwave. So, because I think it's so influential in today's society, I want to go over the history, the sound, and aesthetic of this weird musical genre. So first starting off with the origins. It's the first really internet music genre, which means it's like global. It's the first globalized genre, so it didn't really start in one place or the other, since it started on things like Bandcamp and message boards. And the actual word comes from two different terms. There's a documentary called Paperboy: A Brief History by Lost X on YouTube, and he says that the word comes from these two different terms. The first, vaporware, which is a product which is announced to the public but never actually released, and the second is a Marxist term called waves of vapor. So the Marxist term basically talks about how something can be an idea, a thought, or some kind of action that really doesn't have any purpose or like doesn't really have any kind of meaning or whatever, just kind of like hypotheticals, I guess. And both of these were kind of chosen for the vaporwave genre because it's something that's supposed to be very anonymous, something where it's trying to recreate the feeling of like going into a record store and finding like this cool like electronic music record and not knowing who it's by or where it came from, but all that really matters is that it's good, or not good in this case. So the first vaporwave album to come out is called Echo Jams Volume 1, and this is the first album that they threw like the vaporwave tag onto. It's an album by Chuck Person, who uses the alias One of Tricks Point Never. Chuck Person itself is actually an alias because he didn't want to release this under his serious name, because it's a complete joke. He originally created this by looping a bunch of 80s and 90s, 90s, and early 2000s pop tunes, as we can listen to for a short sec. It's not supposed to be good. It's really, really interesting. That's why I chose this topic. The next album is called Farsight Virtual. So Farsight Virtual is an album by James Ferraro. It was released in 2011, according to the documentary, and it was also, again, one of the first albums. It sounds a lot like that first one. So these two albums, while they sounded kind of similar, they didn't at the same time. And so vaporwave really needed something as a genre, like a defining sound or a defining album. So Floral Shop by Macintosh Plus, who usually goes under the alias Vectroid, was released, according to Bandcamp, on December 9, 2011. It's regarded as one of the most popular vaporwave albums, mainly due to all the talk and the memes and stuff, and you know how it goes. So after that album, everybody wanted to sound like Macintosh Plus. They were recreating album after album of just the same old thing, and even though vaporwave as a genre is usually just supposed to sound like the same old thing, it literally was just the same thing over and over again. So in September 1st, 2012, an artist by the name Blank Banshee released his first album, Blank Banshee 0. This album popularized vapor trap, which is like vaporwave and trap music thrown together. It's probably going to be all right, right? So after the next few years, more subgenres of vaporwave started to form, and that's where vaporwave kind of is today. There's a lot of subgenres like mallsoft, sad boys rap, and future funk, which was kind of the main headliner of all the subgenres. So when Hit Vibes by St. Pepsi came out on May 31st, 2013, according to Bandcamp, it revolutionized the genre. And I'll play some of these later when I get to the sound of vaporwave. Transition. So the actual sound of vaporwave consists of soul, jazz, disco, funk, pop, and incidental music. According to Anthony Fantano, who's a famous music reviewer who talks a lot about albums and stuff like that. And then what actually they do to these songs is they loop them, put on reverb, echo, synths, compression, speeding up and speeding down, and pitch modulation. So let's take a listen to some Vaporwave songs and their original samples. So this is from the album I was showing you earlier. It's literally just the music slowed down, and they put like drums and some other like artists like loop it and stuff, but it's for the most part it's just like slowed down with a heavy emphasis on bass and again, not supposed to be good. So the actual sound and the aesthetic inspires a lot of popular artists today. Artists like Chance the Rapper, Tame Impala, Tori Moi, or Tori Moi if you're not too good on French. Drake, Dame Funk, and Neon Indian. All these people either take influences from Vaporwave, whether it's in their sound or their aesthetic. If you've ever noticed how Hotline Bling looks like a Sonos commercial, that's probably because it was inspired by Vaporwave. Yeah. Speaking of aesthetic, it's really strange because Vaporwave actually started as an art movement. A bunch of people just started putting basically photo collages of very, very strange art on the internet. My personal favorite is Goku Lean. Frank Jeffsey, a popular YouTuber who makes this kind of music, kind of describes it like this. It's kind of like you're living in a junkyard in a dystopian future and you find a bunch of VHS tapes and you're the only person in the world and everything's lonely, but there's a bunch of weed and you're high all the time and you're in Japan and in the sky. Original, I think, to say the least. And a lot of this inspires stuff like the actual clothes we wear today. So if you notice, a lot of like the long sleeve black t-shirts with the writing on the sides, looking at you. And a lot of like I think one of the first times I saw somebody wear like the round brim caps as like a fashion statement was in like Vaporwave culture. Usually like pink or black or something like that with like a Photoshopped Sega logo on there. And a lot of that specifically comes from Sad Boys rap, which was like a subgenre of Vaporwave at the time. Artist Young Lean actually started wearing bucket hats, and that's why everybody wore bucket hats for a while. So all these three things combined, Vaporwave continues to influence our culture today, and it continues to basically be influential in our society. So you'll probably start to pick up on a few things that are kind of similar. So thank you. There was a neutral note code told me there was some Seinfeld stuff and there was like a Death Grips thing too. You know, just a bunch of
About the time
Just show I ended on like
I had 8:15, so you're fine. All right. Let me see here. I think we had Cassandra doing the oral evaluation. Cassandra?
His presentation was really good. He had a clear preview. You organized the material very well, and like the transitions were really smooth. You knew like what you're talking about, and you can tell like you liked your topic and you memorized it. Or like at least,
I'm not saying I would be.
at least like knew it very well to present it good. Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, well, yeah, you sound a little defensive about the topic, man. It's like, well, it's not supposed to be good, and I don't like it, and well, why the hell are we hearing about this? I think you need to do a little bit more explanation as to why this is important. Obviously, it's a subculture that I'm not familiar with at all, and I'm glad to be learning about it. I'm interested in those sorts of things. Maybe some other people in here are familiar with some of what's going on there. But I think that's one of the things that you might want to do. When you get to the end and you're talking about the influence it's having on fashion, for instance, that's something that people can visually see and say, so maybe that would have been a good place to start and say, well, where the heck did this kind of stuff come from? What is this all about? And then you can kind of go back. I did like the sort of suspense thing that you had in the analogy to punk at the beginning, about how it influenced kind of an aesthetic and a way people saw things. And I think there are probably other comparisons that would fit with other music movements, that sort of thing. You almost argue in your speech that it's not a movement, not a musical thing at all. It's just like electronic software thing that people do. One of the things I'm going, well, how do people know about this? I mean, I know that people post crap on YouTube all the time, but I've got 13,000 videos posted on YouTube, and I don't get people sharing that all over the place. How the heck did they start sharing this? You know, there had to be an origination point somewhere. There had to be a groundswell. Something caught on in some way. People started sharing it because they thought it was crap, or because it was just weird, or that there was a trendsetter, or like somebody that moved it along on either on social media trends or someplace else. And I'd like to know a little bit more about that, because if it's really the sub-genre that you're talking about, I'm not sure I'm ever going to encounter it again, except occasionally in the t-shirts that people are wearing.
Yeah, the weird thing is I tried so hard to find like an originating point. Yeah. But the only thing I could really find was like those genres that the one guy talked about.
Yeah, and you had the video that you made the reference to, the documentary kind of thing. It seemed like that's where a lot of your information came from. So I did get the feeling that sometimes information was being presented. Look, we got a long list of albums and artists or non-artists or whatever they want to call themselves, who are doing these kinds of things. And, I'm interested in why people would glom onto this and what's different about the sound. That first example that you had where it's just all these sounds that are being mixed together, I couldn't listen to that for very long. I'd have to kill myself. But the stuff where they're slowing something down or they're adding a drum effect or something like that, I could see why that might be interesting, or people would be compelled to listen to that sort of thing. So I thought that your visuals got stronger the further you got into the speech, and I like the one video clip that you had that did the comparison between the original sound and here's how it's been modified, so it sounds a little bit differently. Then that made it so much easier for me to understand. Here's what they're doing in this field. That made a little bit more sense. Maybe that could have been a little bit earlier in the process. It's a topical method of organization. I could see that there are different parts. I'm going to disagree with Cassandra a little bit. I didn't think the transitions were as clear as they could be, except that we had usually the slides that came along that also prompted us to move along. But I'm not exactly sure that I could pick out the categories. I just know that there is progress and movement. The delivery is okay. I think you want to be careful about speaking to the screen. You have a tendency to do that, so you want to watch out for that. And at the end, like I said, I think you undermine yourself, even if you don't care much for it, but you thought it was interesting. You got to sound a little bit like you're interested in it, and instead it's like, anyway, I'm done. You got to have a little bit more energy there. Okay, thank you.